Hello everybody, welcome back to It's Current Year for another quick battle ladder replay. I am today playing the dwarves of Kadrin up against the Greenskins, who are somewhat ironically being led by Bald Dwarf and a Goblin Great Shaman. So we'll give it a pause and have a look at the armies. So a pretty thematic army for my opponent. He has gone a bit of a goblin, sort of a night goblin force. So 4 night goblins out the front with their stalk and probably slightly vanguard deployed as well. He's gone for 3 goblin rock lobbers, which is a good choice against the dwarves, who tend to be quite sort of densely packed in their unit formations, and obviously they do have good armor piercing damage, and their accuracy by way of other war machines in the game isn't fantastic, but yeah, handy choice for getting down the sort of blocks of goblin infantry. The rusty arrows, great pick against the dwarves with their armor sundering, or just being able to get the dwarven armor down. Things like longbeards, even ironbreakers, things like that. Regular missile fire has a real hard time getting through, so anything to tip the balance in their favor there. Some night goblin archers here. He has Morgrub's mangy marauders in the back here. He has taken a bit of a battery of casters here. So we have and you see this quite often with goblin sort of factions. We have the Madcap Mushroom Vindictive Glare combo to allow, to just absolutely spam that. He's gone duplicated that on 2 different Night Goblin Shamans. And then we have the Goblin Great Shaman, who is on a wolf here, who has taken the Don't Even Try It ability, as well as the Crown of Command, which is pretty handy for keeping your units in the fight. He's taken pretty much all the spells. He's taken Curse of the Bad Moon, Gork'll Fix It, Itchy Nuisance, Vindictive Glare, and Sneaky Stabbing. He's also done the Scroll of Leeching. So he's taken a pretty wide array of spells there, so some versatility there, if nothing else. He has some Forest Goblin Spider Riders on the flank over here. Vanguard deployed in the rear. We have a couple of units of Nasty Skulkers. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool use of the map there and use of your deployment zones, as well as some Night Goblin Squig Hoppers over here. So they'll be pretty decent just for cycle charging. Obviously, with an anti-infantry and armor piercing bonus, they're pretty effective against the dwarves if you can manage them right. I've taken a pretty a bit of a narrow force, I guess. 738. Is a decent amount of dwarves. So we've got some miners with blasting charges out the front, as well as Norgrimlin's Ironbreakers, probably one of the hardest infantry units in the game, with just insane melee defense, great armor, more unit models than a regular unit of Ironbreakers, and a very, very large HP pool. So they're basically good in any matchup. They just last and last and last. 2 Longbeards with great weapons on flanking the Norgrimlins. We've also just got some regular Dwarf Warriors, 2 in the flanks and 1 in the rear, as well as the Dragonback Slayers and some regular Slayers. And for my hero core, I have taken the dreaded combo, the two preeminent slayers of the Warhammer world, Gotrek, obviously with his Rune Axe and his abilities. So Rune Axe of Gotrek, as well as Gotrek's Doom and his other abilities. His what do you call it? His regen, his burst regen there, which I believe has actually been fixed. Felix complements these 2 pretty nicely. Obviously, he's not unbreakable, but he does have the helping hand, which buffs the damage resistance and the melee attack of nearby units, as well as the Blood Oath, which also actually restores hit points of lords and heroes nearby. And then we have Ungrim Iron Fist with his Axe of Dargo, as well as his Red Ruin, Onslaught, Deathblow, those kinds of things. So basically the idea is here is you keep these 3 together. They fight till basically the bitter end. Obviously, as I said, Felix isn't unbreakable, but the other 2 are. They invariably are the last things that your opponents will kill. So obviously some rocks getting lobbed into the poor miners up the front, but that's exactly what the miners are there for. They're basically just there to use their blasting charges, get some free kills on some low tier stuff in the front row, You know, the rock lobbers are going to wear them down pretty quickly. So some night goblins being sent in here. We get a bit of a shot into the flank with those ones, those blasting charges. Dwarf warriors will, you know, this will be a long fight. You know, dwarf warriors don't have great stats, particularly pretty underwhelming melee attack. But yeah, night goblins will struggle to get through their armor and their melee defense. Some great use of fanatics. I actually didn't realize when I first started playing these guys that all these units of night goblins do have the spinning loons. So some good attacks going in there through the flanks. Bit of damage on my longbeards there, which is nice. I do now. Obviously, the trap's been sprung, and there is a pretty large contingent of cavalry coming into my rear, but the Dragonback Slayers are onto it. The regular stays here. They will take some damage. Obviously, it'll be a fairly atrocious fight. You know, the poison of the forest goblins will do its job to sort of dampen the impact of the Dragonback Slayers, but that's a fight that will be run very, very quickly. Obviously, with their anti-large bonus, the lack of AP on these guys doesn't really matter against forest, and you see how quick that fight was won. They just absolutely bounced off those Slayers. So keeping my hero core pretty tight here. Obviously, one of the weaknesses of the dwarves is they lack mobile answers to these kind of things, and obviously I am quite narrow, but I am pushing forward just to basically just tie up all this shooting here on my shielded infantry and get into the artillery crews, which will break very quickly. There is a itchy nuisance going down here, but there's nothing really in combat, so I don't mind too much. The nasty skulkers have been introduced into the game, and I guess if they can stay in with other infantry that can take some hits, then these guys will get some good damage in. But they aren't the most resilient of infantry. Their armor piercing will be effective against longbeards, but longbeards will beat them very easily. Gotrek and Ungrim are anti-large, so fighting the forest goblins here is a good matchup for them. Obviously not a super expensive output, but they will kill them very quickly, and they won't do much damage in return, especially with Felix's heals and the damage resistance buff going down here. Deadly Onslaught was popped on both of them, so their combat stats were buffed for a time as well. And as I said, the longbeards here, seeing off the nasty skulkers who weren't really able to get their murderous, what was it called, their opportunist murder, as they probably wouldn't have been winning that fight. So the Dragonback Slayers and the Nor Gremlins, I mean, you see Nor Gremlins here, they've taken an absolute pounding. Haven't got a ton of kills, Nor Gremlin, unfortunately. They've been worked down pretty well by all the rock lobbers and that, but they've got 1,000 HP left, and they're still rocking 44, mid-40s leadership. They just fight and fight and fight, and they will, even with 21 unit models, they will beat these two. They will beat these two sorcerers. But I'm starting to get a little bit pulled apart. And this is where the fight is good for the nasty skulkers. They are winning, so they will get their opportunist murder proc going off. The night goblins here are poisoning the longbeards, so you see that their combat stats aren't anything to write home about, but they will fight on with their leadership obviously being quite strong. My other units of longbeards here and are making the advance up to the front lines, but you see we're sort of getting pulled apart, and my opponent does a nice play here. Pulls one rock lobber back over here. He's retreating with the rusty arrows. He's pulled another rock lobber up over here, as well as these night goblin archers. Just to allow, or just to force me to basically not be able to sort of move as one sort of slow rolling force. The Dragonback Slayers here are trying desperately to get on this Goblin Great Shaman. That's not a fight that he wants at all. They will kill him very, very quickly, but he's going to be able to pull through. Obviously, the pace he has on his wolf is very strong. We do shatter these squig hoppers, so that's a nice pick up there, because they are potentially cycle charging. It can be pretty nasty for me, and we sort of start a long process here of just trying to sort of stick together as much as we can, particularly keeping my hero together so Felix's healing proc will go down, as you see here with Gotrix. Actually, I think they have to be in combat for that to be. I think they actually have to be in constant. So he is. Yeah, Yeah, it's not proccing on him for some reason at the moment. So he's sending the nasty skulkers in just to hold up this and allow him to get a few more shots off. I'm happy with him shooting my warriors. I'm glad he's shooting the warriors. I know I don't have many slayers left, but I would rather him shoot the warriors, shoot the shielded infantry. These guys do unfortunately break, which is unfortunate. So the rock lobber here will be able to continue to fight. A good use of an Itchy or a Gork will fix it because the speed debuff here is very telling. You know, the speed on all my infantry units here is absolutely pathetic. You know, we're like basically shuffling around like zombies, allowing him to just again retreat back a couple of meters, rip a few volleys in, keep his rock lobber safe. Over on this side of the field, you know, we've got down this rock lobber crew. They would have been better off dropping the equipment and trying to sort of lap around because they will still be faster than me. This unit of Night Goblin archers here, you know, with 7 unit models left on these slayers, they're probably better off just actually stopping and fighting in combat and trying to just kill them, and then regrouping with the rest of the force to try and get shots over here and help out however they can. The Dragonback Slayers here are going to probably get taken out. You know, Morgul's Magi Marauders have expended their ammunition. If anything, you know, obviously being large and not particularly well armored, both of these units will take some damage from the Dragonback Slayers, but just the, you know, I guess the cycle charge in, having the 53 nasty skulkers in here as well. These guys are probably, this is probably their last fight. They're going to fulfill their Slayer oaths and die in glorious battle to the hated Gobbos. Another Gork will fix it going down here. Again, just making me super slow. Using these Night Goblins as just a speed bump, just to get more distance between his rock lobbers and what I have left. And as you said, we're just sort of a long, slow, painful process here for me of having to sort of try and pick up whatever I can. I know I don't have the pace. I know I've just got to keep chasing, keep these guys from shooting. Really, there's, you know, the Rusty Arrows are out of ammo. These Night Goblins over here are, I think they're actually hidden from me at the moment. They're out of harm's, or they're really not a factor at the moment. Morgul's Magi Marauders are out of ammo and are trying to just clean off these. You know, as I said, last of the Slayers here, 1 Slayer left here, 19 Dwarf Warriors here. So these guys are pretty much done over here. So everything I have here, what you see is what you get. Another good use of a speed debuff here, and this time it's 72% rather than the 48% of Gork will fix it. So again, he's just buying himself time, and this is, I mean, it's frustrating for me, but this is exactly what I'd be doing if I was in his position. Obviously, he doesn't have any ammo left on his Rusty Arrows or anything like this, but he still does have, you know, a full health unit of rock lobbers here. 3 rock lobbers with 10 shots. 3 rock lobbers over here with 10 shots as well. He might as well get value out of that. We've got 9 volleys over here on these Night Goblin archers, so we might just give it a little bit of a slow play here, and he's just reassembling his forces. I'm just basically chasing this rock lobber because I know he has to come to me with everything else he has, but I don't want, you know, this one's going to be able to get its shots in. That I can't do anything about this, but I can keep this one on the move and at least make sure those 7 shots there, or those 10 shots or whatever that he had left there, can't be used to good effect. Again, just trying to bait me into attack orders, and he does, unfortunately, there. So I decided to at least turn to face to the Night Goblins and push them back. I figure, given how much I have left at this stage, that perhaps the rock lobbers aren't as big a threat as, you know, maybe, given that all I have left now is Gotrek and Ungrim. Gotrek obviously has some heals up his hand. He's nowhere near his healing cap. The rock lobbers probably aren't going to hit these single models very often. So basically, I'm just at the point now where I'm like, well, okay, I'm just sort of keeping on the move so the rocks can't get any kind of target on me. But you're going to have to come to me now, otherwise this is going to end in a draw. And fair play to my opponent, he does that. He doesn't sort of, he could have just spread it. I mean, all of these things have the potential to hide from me, so they could have just hidden around if he wasn't confident in taking them. But now basically we just get a mass pit fight starting, and the sort of true power of this combo, and Felix obviously has been routed off and taken from the field. But you see here, look at the stats on this guy. You know, there is an Itchy Nuisance and a smoke bomb going down here, but 90 melee defense, 46 melee attack. Oh, it's worn off there. 630 melee damage. Obviously, Ungrim has basically no... he's dropped Red Ruin, so he's got basically no melee defense, but is well armored, unlike Gotrek. So can sort of see off a lot of the attacks of this, and a lot of these guys, it's the Rusty Arrows, it's Night Goblin Archers, even Nasty Skulkers, they have a little bit of armor piercing, but they don't have great, I suppose 38 melee attack when I've got Red Ruin popped isn't, or even without that, 40 melee defense. It's not great, they're not great defensive stats on Ungrim, and basically we're just going to be wading through a sea of goblins here at the until the end of the fight. So as you can see here, Gotrek, and I'm so glad CA finally fixed this. Gotrek does get his heal off here, I believe. So he's currently looking at about 600 hit points, and I'm thinking, he's even his Goblin Great Shaman, can get a few cycle charges in here, put a couple of hundred HP points into him, and then basically I'll probably end up just getting worn down, the amount of attacks, but a heal does go down, actually back-to-back heals there, back up to 1600, and you saw what that just did momentarily to the balance of power. Forest Goblin Spider Riders coming in, and I am spam clicking at this point both my attacks onto this unit of Forest Goblin Spider Riders, being large unit entities, not having great defensive stats or anything. Both of these guys are anti-large, and their armor piercing doesn't matter in this matchup. But we're just getting some chain routes here. The damage output of these two Slayers is impressive. I believe the Spider Riders have actually shattered, which is nice. Does get at the very least, he does get a smoke bomb down on me, and he puts had a crown of command down on them, which on the Rusty Arrows, just to keep unit models in there, and they do have poisoned attacks in combat. A returning, like I said, again, similar to the Forest Goblin Spider Riders, trying to just force my attacks onto these guys, because I know everyone is going to kill multiple unit models, and any balance of power that is left in my opponent's favor is going to be probably in these guys, because they're not terrible, they're not terrible combatants. They can at least, I guess, maybe with their mass knock me over, or disrupt my attacks. But we see here, his things are breaking and rallying and coming back. We've got the Axe of Dargo on here. I know if I probably get one or two attacks, obviously Goblin Great Shamans have a very, very small, particularly when they're not on Arachnorok Spiders, they have a very small HP pool. One or two attacks on this guy could just about rout him, and that'll be pretty much the game. But Ungrim is absolutely on his deathbed. 443 hit points there. Bear in mind, he has no heals. Gotrek, 840 hit points, but you see, there's just not enough damage dealing potential to get through this. So my opponent will try for one last sort of charge, I guess, with the Morgrim's Magi Marauders. But I do have some buffs going down, I believe, or they've just gone off cooldown. And as they start to waver and rout, basically all he has left at this stage is the Goblin Great Shaman. And like I said, good on my opponent for not just draw kiting or sitting in the corner of the map. He's trying to buy himself as much time as he possibly can to get anything back in. But I think at this point, he basically realizes there's not much for it. Even though he's relatively healthy relative to his HP pool, there's not much he can do against either of these guys. One attack on this from either of them is going to pretty much knock him off the battlefield. But he has bought himself some time for his remaining units to come back and at least muster maybe one last gasp attempt. But with strong enemies nearby, the poor leadership of goblins. You notice the timer here. There's about a minute left in the game. So my being a good sport here, my opponent does give one last charge, but I do pop the Deadly Onslaught buffs, which were off cooldown, and we get, I think Ungrim actually gets an attack on the Goblin Great Shaman here. He turns around and puts an attack on him. Actually, Gotrek, I think, just got one. And the last of the routes for these guys, shattering them, you see, one hit there, bang, down to less than 1,000 HP. The balance of power goes into my favor for pretty much the first time since the start of the battle. And the Slayer Bros pull out a last stand victory. So, bit of a fun battle there. Obviously, Gotrek and Ungrim, it's the hero goon squad that you can employ. There's a few different ways you can do this. Obviously, Bretonia can do this pretty well with the Fey Enchantresses, Mist of the Ladies, sort of Mortis Engine effect. But given the fact that Ungrim is also unbreakable, he's basically a second Gotrek without the healing proc. It makes them just really, really difficult to kill for any of these guys. What probably would have been really effective was a Goblin Big Boss. They need stabbing. Might have been pretty clutch here at the end to try and knock off one of them and bring them down. But just even though the infantry fight, you look there. I mean, Norgrim and Zonebreaker's 9 kills. He dealt with them really well. The Dragonback Slayer's got some good engagements on the Forest Goblins and the Squig Hoppers. But the rest of the infantry, the Longbeards held out, but the Goblin Rock Lobbers, countered them pretty well. Armor piercing shots into tightly packed, heavily armored infantry was a good combo there. And the Night Goblins with Fanatics got some great Fanatics shots off early in the game, but just the staying power. Pretty much just came down to the staying power of Gotrek and Ungrim. And once again, thanks to my opponent there for being a sport about it and playing for a result rather than draw kiting, which he absolutely could have done with what he had left. I had obviously no gyrocopters, nothing like that to pin him down and force the engagement. But he did it anyway, so thank you to Bull Dwarf for that game. So a bit of a fun game there, but a really close one that went down to the wire. I think there was about 45 seconds of game left, which ended in a victory for the Dwarves of Karak, Kadrin, Gotrek, and Ungrim. Will have to they live to fight another day to fulfill their Slayer oath. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.